So I have the pleasure of talking to Wade MacNeil, guitarist and vocalist of Alexisonfire, as most of you are going to know him. But today we're actually talking about his upcoming score to Jay Baruchel's directed horror film, Random Acts of Violence, which will see a release tomorrow, as of when we're talking, via Dynalone Records. First of all, how are you doing? Pre-Halloween Eve?
Yeah, Halloween Eve. Doing pretty good.
Devil's Night, is that what it's called, or is that what tonight is?
Devil's Night right now, technically, yeah. I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah, man, I'm good. I put out a lot of records on Halloween. Sorry about that. I just got a new laptop, and I'm getting text messages today.
Oh, yeah, it's always fun.
So, yeah. Just totally derailed immediately. First question. Yeah, I've put out a lot of questions. I've put out a lot of records on Halloween, and it's like it's cool to be putting this out specifically because it's a pretty dark score musically, and especially just to every musician wants to score a horror film, and to be able to work on this with a bunch of my buddies, it was such a blast to work on, and really stoked on the way it came out in the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've kind of actually hit on 5 of my questions all there at once, so I'll kind of dissect them piece by piece. But, this is the second movie, if I'm not mistaken, that you've worked on with Jay. The first one being Goon 2, or Goon and the Last of the Enforcers, I believe is what it's actually called. And, something that I kind of, in thinking about this soundtrack after listening, or the score after listening to it for the last couple of days, is... couldn't really be two different kinds of movies to score as far as kind of back-to-back. Goon kind of being more of a lighthearted affair, whereas this one you have to really pay attention and add the nuance and suspension and tension that you're literally watching on the screen. Did you find one genre of movie to score to be a little bit easier than the other?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of every composing project is really different. And, Jay and I have been having these conversations about music for this film for the last 5 years. It's crazy how much work and luck and so many things that go into pushing a film forward. So he's a good buddy of mine. So it's when we have those music conversations anybody has with their friends, or oh, you heard this, or you got to check this out. We're always doing that, but it's I feel we're always mentally making the playlist for his next movie. And so especially with this, Goon he had a very specific idea, and that lends itself to some pretty epic stuff. You know what I mean? He had a great composer named Trevor Morris, who does the score for the Vikings. He did all the orchestral score for Last of the Enforcers, so the big kind of classic orchestra stuff. And then I did a lot of the electronic and kind of rock stuff, a lot more of the when they're playing games in the arena, that stuff. But there's only so many ways you can go, I think, with that. And it's pretty obvious. You make a song and it just it sticks to the way the picture looks and it makes sense and it helps it, or it's just so fucking wrong. I think that was a more streamlined thing, but for Random Acts, we really knew we could go off the deep end. And Jay likes a lot of really abrasive music, loves harsh kind of goth techno stuff, Skinny Puppy and Drumline Assembly, and then there was a bunch of references in, we first talked about it, Swans, or the Michael Gira solo stuff, which is just really bleak acoustic stuff. And so I knew I was going to be able to push the music in a pretty abrasive direction, which is pretty fucking cool place to be in. But yeah, obviously it kept changing the more we saw the film, and but yeah, it's it was kind of wide open for everything on this, and that's what allowed it to be so much fun.
I think, the interesting thing for me, as of when, we're doing this, I've only heard the soundtrack. I've not even seen the trailer because I didn't want to be informed potentially by a scene and listen to the movie or listen to the score and kind of maybe like there's a reference to, you know, with the song titles or whatever, be like, oh, that must be for this part or whatever. I just kind of wanted to go in blind and really get a sense of what the mood is. And, you know, it's interesting that with the Random Act score, to hear a movie, like basically hear everything without seeing any visuals to it, but kind of getting a sense of what it is about based on what you're creating sonically. And I have to say, I really dug, you know, basically the diverse nature of the music on here. I mean, the opening track, There Can Be No Beginning, was almost kind of like a Tubular Bells Exorcist-y kind of vibe to me. Maybe that's just something I was putting on it. But then, I mean, like, you have various elements kind of throughout, like with electronics and synthwave stuff, kind of like a Cellar Dweller, Scandroid, M83 kind of stuff, even tipping of the cap to like John Carpenter, Johan Johansson, and Ben Frost. So what are some of your composing influences that, you know, maybe informed you of where you wanted to go with this?
Well, it's cool you brought up the Tubular Bells thing because, you know, actually that's one of those things that really changed. Is in the original script, the end scene of the film was supposed to be in a church. It ended up changing, as you will see when you see the movie. But like, so when I read the script originally, I was like, I really want this film to be, the score to be heavily reliant on like chime and bell. But I think there's just something very ominous sonically about that.
That shaker or whatever you used in somewhere in the middle of the record, it was really fucking creepy. Like and then it like kind of comes back like later on.
Like so like, you know, bells were this thing that we kept talking about, and then there's a large part of the main character Todd's like backstory is about this kind of very traumatic event, the thing that happened to him at like Christmas time when he was a kid. So that was kind of like shifting that to like, oh, this could be like a cool like Tubular Bells reference, you know, but making it like more minor and dark. And it's kind of like taking things first out of the script that like reference what the characters are doing and reference what the characters are doing emotionally, and, you know, having some sort of anchor in the film, like that, or I wanted to like play a huge fucking knife as if it was like an instrument, like something like get a big huge hunting knife and like drag it across like the hood of a car or something like that. Tried that, didn't sound very good. Sorry to cut you off, do you have a collection of sounds that you just will bank on, like just weird whatever, maybe even like walking in the snow and then I'll re-loop it backwards and it sounds like a really cool whatever? Yeah, I mean, like, so I think I try and like grab some stuff like that specific to what I'm working on that makes sense, you know, like, and so like for this, like what I found that ended up this sound that's like, it's in the Slacker Man theme a bit, it's kind of throughout the whole film, is like put a like electric guitar in a super weird tuning and then like bowed it really violently with a violin bow and then like process the fuck out of it with a bunch of delay and reverb, but it sounds like, I don't know, to me it sounds like a knife. I'm like, so we're kind of assigning certain sonic things like that, you know, to kind of like create this world that doesn't really exist. And then, yeah, there's certainly some things that, you know, some of the things you mentioned that, you know, I think John Carpenter has created some of the most iconic horror music like ever. I'm a huge fan of his, and so there's a cool way that I think to reference some of that, you know, like he's like the blueprint he's created for like horror scores is like it's in almost every horror movie whether people know it or not, you know. These things that he did on his films are like the building blocks of like how people hear scary music. So there's certainly like a bit of that, you know. It's like I definitely love the like Friday the 13th like snare drum with like delays on it, like that, like shot thing, and then like especially there's a ton of vocal stuff in here, like layered vocal stuff, and that's like I think the scariest stuff that's in The Shining is all from this orchestral piece called Again.
Is that what's at the end of the movie? Toward the end?
Yeah. It's just like it's all mostly just voice. This huge choral thing, and it's horrifying. And so, like, trying to, you know, I think trying to like stack a lot of that, like layer a lot of like voice in the thing. Like in one way, I think reminded me of this kind of like Christmas time era where this like traumatic stuff that the film's all based around is in there, and then also just like, yeah, I think looking at these movies like The Shining or Halloween or Friday the 13th, these certain things in those films, like what is like freaks me out. What are those musical moments that I think are really cool, but also like start to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and how can I incorporate that in a way that's like a little bit new and like not just photocopying it.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the really interesting thing is at times there are maybe this isn't the word to use, but at times, and I felt like that was the interesting thing about listening to it, just literally throwing it on, not paying attention to any of the song titles, whatever, just literally throwing it on and kind of seeing where it took me, is at times it's very ominous and sinister sounding, but then there's like almost like parts, like just little pieces of like hope and brevity before it kind of takes you back under. And it's really like one of those where I feel like that's kind of like a benchmark of a really great horror movie and a really great score, is that as horrible as whatever you're seeing is, at certain parts you're like, okay, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe we're gonna be okay. And then here comes everything just to rip you fucking back down again, and you're like, oh fuck. And I think that the score did a really good job, just sonically as its own, did a great job of capturing that vibe very well, of making you feel like you're traversing through some heavy shit. Also probably helped that I was driving in the middle of early in the morning in the dark to a pretty sketchy part of town for my job. So I also was like, yeah, this seems like fitting for where I'm about to park my car.
Well, I mean, that's like definitely one of the cool things about, listening to scores, like, and why I definitely was like pushing to get this released is like, I love listening to scores, like driving and listening to a score is, because you can separate it from the movie in certain aspects, or like, or even like the polar opposite of what you said is like, you could be going for a walk and it's like nice and sunny out, but like listening to this like macabre music and it's like everything seems weird all of a sudden. But yeah, I mean, I think what you just touched on about the kind of like light and dark of the music is definitely something I think I've probably picked up from playing in bands. Yeah. And that, especially in heavy bands, is you can't just like come out of the gate and have it be just like full out all the time, because eventually it stops being impactful.
Right.
It's that space like in music that like actually makes it have a punch. Like if it's just blast beats all the time, like eventually it sounds soft, like, and so I think like the soundtrack equivalent of that is like by teasing in things that are more like melodic or not necessarily happy, but somber or emotional. And then so when it's that, like when it's time for somebody to get their head cut off, again.
It's kind of funny you bring that up. Working with the bands, I actually had a question that was, and I guess it can go either way, honestly, but has working on scoring either affected how you write songs now for Alexisonfire or Gallows or whatever else it is you're doing, or vice versa? Has something that maybe you had done previously in any of those bands informed an idea or a direction you wanted to go in when scoring?
I think it's probably gone both ways. I think because when I first started scoring, my reference point was not like, as a person that's not a classically trained musician, as a person that's been writing heavier records for the last, 15 years. When I started working on Goon, I was like thinking, what would be cool is if like this part sounded like I Want to Be Your Dog or like Holiday in Cambodia, and it's like, so I think those are kind of the reference points I usually go to. And I certainly listen to like a huge scope of music and everything, but I think maybe those references are like a little bit more like, punk and hardcore metal related, even if I'm just like dissecting them and end up doing them on a synth. So I think at first, playing in bands was completely the way it influenced the stuff that I was working on. And also, I think probably led to me doing more composing, because it did sound like the stuff I was doing sounded different than a lot of other people's stuff. And then vice versa, like I've been doing a lot of scoring the last 5 years, like film and TV and video games and stuff. And the last song Alexis put out, Season of the Flood, which is this very long, drawn out, like 9-minute thing. Everybody left the studio and I was like fucking around with some guitar stuff. And then, everybody came the next day and I was like, okay, I'd made like 2 minutes of noise at the beginning. And everyone was like, fucking sick. And that is like 100%, I think, if you like maybe hear one of my scrolls or think about me doing that kind of work and you go back and listen to Season of the Flood, the beginning of that song is like very cinematic sounding. Like, so I think that stuff is definitely a lot of those tricks and like things that I've learned how to do in scoring films, like definitely got applied to that. So I think they both kind of inform each other at this point. And it's like, yeah, it's cool to bring those ideas to the bands. It's fun to like bring those band ideas to the films.
Well, it's kind of funny because leading up to this, something I was thinking of almost immediately that struck out to me, and I don't know the songwriting of who wrote what, but a song like You Burn First, I was like, that seems very kind of cinematic feeling, like the way it just kind of ominously kind of comes in with your vocal and then it kind of builds to what it is. And it kind of was like, I feel like this is a Wade song. I feel like this is something he kind of slowly built and, kind of cascades toward the end and all that kind of stuff because of how big it feels and how like it feels like it's a story of sorts moving forward. And was one of those where, like I was like, I wonder how much of like him doing these things has influenced one or the other. So good to know.
I think I think I get a lot of misplaced credit for You Burn First that I usually accept. I mean, like certainly, like I wrote a lot for that song, but the real skeleton of it is like written by Dal. Just like I think he went into a lot of Nine Inch Nails, and then what I think a lot of people assume because of the way it sounds, but it's not me singing that song either. It's Garrett O'Donnell from Planes Was Taken for Stars. And I think if people think it sounds like me, it's probably because I've been trying to sing like Garrett for years.
Everybody, I mean, indirectly, I'm sure anybody who has a deep, raspy voice, you all get lumped together.
Yeah, we're either trying to sing like Garrett or we're trying to sing like Chuck from All Water. Kind of speaking to just the overall career you've had, something that's I was kind of thinking about is within the decades-long career you've had at this point, what separate challenges have you learned about in doing scoring versus writing for a band? Like at any point, has there maybe been a song that you were writing for one project that became something you ended up using pieces of for a score, or even vice versa? Yeah, well, I mean, some things just never seem to fit, You've got these riffs that just won't seem to go away or never find the right place. And so I think a lot of those little ideas certainly can work themselves into like the film and TV stuff, because the amount of music we need to make for that is like pretty astronomical. I think the big shift in like the change was me thinking about writing songs to like being like, okay, I need to write 80 minutes. Like it stopped being about like an idea or something, and it starts being about just like this huge breadth of time. And
are you referencing more of, because we've talked about this on the podcast a couple of times, like when you're writing a record and a label tells you need something that's at least blank amount of time or a certain amount of songs, is that what you're referencing?
No, I mean, like I think Alexis has been very fortunate, and just like the people we've worked with from the start of the band, and maybe our own just stubbornness, but we've always done whatever the fuck we wanted. But that being said, our songs are long enough. We haven't had to sweat.
Fair enough.
But I think just like, even though I say like I don't have to worry about writing a record that's too short, it's still about only like 1/4 of the amount of music I would need to create for a film or something like that. So Yeah, I guess it's they're like very, very, very different things. There's definitely like a learning curve, like a big one, but it's something that's like very enjoyable to work on. So,
excuse me. You've been working with Andrew McPherson. I believe that's how you say his name, McPherson.
yeah.
Okay. For other stuff, how did you guys meet, and what is it that you guys found in working with each other that makes you consistently come back to working with each other?
He worked on Goon in an editing capacity. So he had like a film editing background. And then one thing just like led to another, and then we've like worked on a few things together, and I think we've worked on enough things together that we won't be doing it anymore.
Fair enough. I was gonna say, I mean, like it seems like you guys kind of have like I mean, you mentioned Nine Inch Nails a couple seconds ago, like a Trent Atticus kind of vibe, where you're able to work so well together, but make really interesting, diverse music for the specific project. Whether in Trent Atticus's point, whether it's a score for like the Social Network, or even doing Nine Inch Nails stuff, or I'm totally blanking on the other band that basically started that working relationship. But it's one of those that it's just kind of interesting to. When you find a group of people or a duo basically that are able to just create so much diverse things, it's really kind of interesting to see how they find each other and how they work.
Yeah, I mean, definitely met each other through Baruchel. Did some cool shit, and it's a wrap on that.
Fair enough. I do, I was kind of thinking, as I was thinking more back to like scores and like some of my favorite ones, like Terminator 2 is one of my favorite soundtracks scores. Growing up, I used to have it on a cassette because I was a nerd. But something I was thinking of is how hard is it to make something that is matching or setting a tone for what you're visually seeing, but also not taking away or overpowering the visual that you're supposed to kind of be setting the bed for.
Yeah, I mean, like that's certainly a problem sometimes, is because like the most important thing is like pushing the story forward and what's happening like on the film. Like you can certainly help that and maybe add to it from time to time, but there's certainly parts where like the music needs to be carpet. Like it needs to be tucked under. It can't like clash with what's going on emotionally, and so yeah, like it does need to be pulled back. And like it's a like trial and error for sure, because just like the tone of things, like you think like, oh, this could be something interesting, and then you see it against the picture, and you're like, oh, this looks like this sounds like someone's going like driving downtown to kill somebody, and that's what's happening on the screen. So, yeah, I mean, it is certainly like some trial and error. And then it's like, it's working with the director, and hopefully the director, and especially Jay, is like a very big music guy, and like cares a lot about that and knows a lot about music. So he certainly helps that process. And, it's like, it's a big, like there's a lot of people that like need to come together to make a film happen. And so if you've got the right people working on it, like, everyone kind of helps like chime in with those thoughts, and it gets there in the end.
I with all the things that you've worked on, aside from just the music side of things, radio and all that kind of stuff, is directing yourself, like doing something in a directing capacity, something you're interested in doing, or are you kind of more one that just wants to kind of do as much as you've done, seeing how much bullshit has to go into getting something even financed, approved, made, and all the other shit?
I think I'd probably be more interested in writing something. But I don't know. I think, like having to work on all these different things, the one thing it showed me is like, obviously I'm really passionate about music and it's my life, but I think what I like the most is like working with other creative people and like making something together. You know, so I think like the same enjoyment I think could definitely be got out of like writing on something, or like I don't know, maybe I could direct a music video. Maybe we should start there.
There you go.
Lower level. I'll tell you what stressed me the fuck out was I act in the movie, like I'm a radio host in the film, and that's like
big stretch.
I know, it's not even, it's like like it's not even a reinvention, but fuck, that was like the most stressful thing I've ever done.
That's funny considering how many music videos you've done where I'm sure you're like, okay, here's like, because I mean, like, you know, and I'm not super big on you know, movies or anything like that, but it's like, you know, I know like here's like your single lens coverage, here's a wide shot, here's this, like here's where you need to be for coverage for somebody else's shot if you're in the shot or whatever. So I feel like the transition, at least from doing as many music videos as you've been a part of, low budget to however big they've, you know, actually gotten. But I feel like at least it would be a little bit more easier. Like you would understand what a mark is and how to, like, you know, not necessarily follow a camera if it's a panning shot or things like that. But to hear you say like, oh, it was like one of the most stressful things I've done. It's like, really, that's fucking interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like certainly I suppose that stuff, probably having done all that stuff would have put me on ease a little bit more, you know, like just having been in front of cameras and like, you know, maybe even just like standing around working in front of a bunch of people, but very different thing from like throwing your guitar around. And to me, like sitting down with like Jesse Williams and like having a like conversation where I tear a strip off of him for like 9 minutes straight.
Very much so. I guess that is very accurate difference in what's going on.
I was like so stressed out about it. I didn't eat breakfast. And then where Jay was like, I think we got it. Like, guys, come watch this. So we were all sitting around, and it's like Jesse Williams, and then Jordana Brewster is like his partner, and she's like watching the scene. So it's like the three of us are like watching on the camera, but it's silent because we're just watching the camera play back. And then my stomach like really is like grumbling, like audibly very loud in this completely silent situation because I haven't eaten anything at all today. And I was just like, people are pretending to not happen. And then I didn't eat this morning. I was really stressed.
One of the last questions I have for you, just because it's been an interesting question to ask everybody, especially creative people. What have you been up to during this pandemic? Obviously, touring isn't really a thing that you can do. Potentially actually going and recording in studios. I see videos of people doing it, but it seems very limited, so it's not like necessarily a full band. It's whoever's recording their parts that day kind of doing stuff. What have you been doing, and will we maybe see something from you out of this time that you've had?
Yeah, I think probably because I've been by myself for so long, I wrote a ton of like kind of cozy acoustic songs. Like a lot. Like I wrote like 20. So I'm actually going into the studio on Monday, like this coming Monday, to record. And I guess it's like, you know, like a bit of a like soft Neil Youngish kind of like record.
I would almost say Americana, but I can't because you're Canadian.
Yeah, you know, half of the guys in the band were Canadian, and they're like the go-to for Americana. So I don't know, we're involved in it somehow. You're so
polite.
Yeah, man. So I'm gonna record a cozy rock record with. As you said, it's kind of a bit weird in studios, so I'm like recording with my buddy Danny, who's just like can play every instrument wonderfully. So between the two of us, we're gonna knock it all out, and that, and hopefully when the snow starts falling, hopefully get together with the Alexis dudes when we get locked down for winter and work on some new stuff.
Fair enough. Always, it's just kind of interesting because, like, you have some people who, in doing this, they've said like, just enjoying the time off because you know, some people have been like, I've been either in the tour album or record album cycle thing just for 15, 20 years. So it's kind of nice having all this time off, even though I'm getting a little itch to create something. But adversely, you have other people who are like, I'm so fucking antsy to go do something. I have like talking with Ben from Converge the other day, he was like, so Mutoid Man's got a bunch of shit written. We just got to go record it. Converge has got some new shit. We just got to go record it. I've been working on some new shit with other people. And so you see some people just go so far to the other realm where they're like, I just have all I need to do whatever just to be creative during this time because I'm going to go fucking crazy.
It's been good, though, I think, like, in that respect, because, so many, like, musicians, you just burn yourself out really bad, and then you go, like, okay, I need to take some time. And, like, I'm guilty of this, too. And say, be like, okay, I'm not going to go on tour for, like, a couple months. Not going to do anything for a couple months, but like in those months off, you like end up starting another band, or like you do something.
Right.
Fuck, like Alexis did the funniest one last year, where he was just like, "I'm taking a full year off," and he's like, he tours more than fucking anybody, like, and he's like such a workhorse, and he was like, like really needs it, and we're always like, "Thank you, fuck, please." Do yourself a favor. And then he was just like, started a record label and then like produced and played on like the first band he signs like album. And then just like, it just kept going. And then he's like, I've written a lot of Alexa stuff. And then I was just like, man, your wife, she's going to be mad at us. But
I have one last question.
He's chilled it the fuck out finally because he has to.
I have one last question, and then I'll have you plug socials and all that kind of stuff. This is just something as a longtime Alexis fan that I've kind of wondered, just given the nature of the band's legacy at this point. I'm in my mid-30s at this point, so the band is kind of I kind of grew up with all of you, like roughly around the same age. Is it interesting to see what the band's legacy has turned into once you guys came back? Like, has any of that shocked you at all? Or is it one of those where you kind of were like, fuck, like, where were all of you toward, the end when we really kind of could use the big push to get over the hump of whatever the next level may be for you guys?
I think it's, like, the most surprising thing, and it continues to, like, surprise me. And... for us to like stop playing and then come back and have it be bigger is like such a brain breaker. And it's I don't know, it's weird to think about, legacy or stuff like that when it's my own stuff.
Well, you're still adding to it too.
I hear people say stuff like that, and it's like, I understand it, but it's I guess it's hard to take a step back and view it, but it's like it's definitely easier to appreciate it these days and like be really grateful because we're not touring nonstop, because we'll go and do like 2 weeks, and then I think like it really allows us to be like present and like enjoy it, and it's I don't know, it's like it's pretty mind blowing, and I think I'm still a little bit surprised every time we do something that it's like. Because it just like it's somehow keeps getting better, like the fact that we're playing, like we did like a tour before like COVID happened, like the end of January, and it's like we're playing the hockey arenas in Canada, and it's like it's just like I don't know, I still feel like I don't know. I really don't have the words for it. It's like it's something that's been, like my entire life. At this point, like we started the band when we were like just turning 17. So it's like that really cool thing that it's still a part of our lives. Like the fact that the guys I like grew up skateboarding with and going to punk shows, we're now skateboarding around the Bell Center before the doors open up for the show.
Yeah, it's been, something that kind of made me think about that is in the last this year's kind of just gone by, so my time frame might be slightly off, but I'll say in the last 2 years, one of my favorite bands is Every Time I Die, and toward the end of the album cycle for Low Teens, getting to see them, I was here in Michigan. We were one of the only 4 dates that they did on the Fall Out Boy tour, playing arenas. And I paid more money than I probably will ever pay to go see Every Time I Die. just to see them in an arena, because I was like, this shouldn't happen. It's not because they're not good. It's not because they don't make good music. It's just that kind of a band isn't really an arena band. You know,
sure.
They're very much a right on top of everybody, and that's kind of where their environment is. And I wanted to see if it would translate in an arena setting. And they tried as much as they could, but when you got a 20-foot barricade in front of you and literally seats and moms and shit and people who probably have no idea who they are, it was really tough. Then see them like a month later opening for Mastodon and Coheed in sheds was another one where I was like, well, fuck, I gotta go see that, because again, a band that I wouldn't expect to be in that situation. And the music definitely works, but it's not again, it's not their crowd per se. So it's really interesting to see when bands you grew up with and bands that you used to see in your local 200, 300, 400 cap rooms now suddenly get to this big thing. It's like, how does that translate, I should say, and how are you as the musicians able to go, well, fuck, we're used to playing these size rooms. Now we have to take what we do and put it into an arena and make it bigger. And sometimes I feel like in your situation where maybe you went away and you weren't quite at that level, and then you come back and now you are, if it makes you just approach and think of things completely differently, because you're like, shit, now we have to put together an arena level show versus just like throw and go, put it in. We're in a sweaty club. Who gives a fuck? It's about the energy.
It's definitely a different show for sure. But I think like with Alexis, like it was always this gradually building thing that just kept like getting a little bigger and a little bigger, and we just kept touring our asses off. But as you said, like there is like a different, like, you know, there is a different thing. Like from the festivals we used to play before we broke up, and like when we started playing again, we came back, we were headlining those festivals.
Right.
So like you know, I mean, I think our show like grew and like got bigger and like the way we approach things, but yeah, it's certainly at a different level. And I think you need to put like it. Yeah, I mean, the person at the back of like in the nosebleeds can't see fucking anything. There's just a bunch of strobe lights and super distorted guitars and us running around. Like, you know, you need to do more. So it's like starting to involve like, yeah, like more video stuff, like really starting to, you know, like our lighting dude Stumpy, who's been with us for like the last 5 years, is like, fuck, man, like he's probably more important than I am in the band.
Well, I mean, if you keep smashing those Gibsons, of course you will be.
So like, yeah, just I think, yeah, and also just like, yeah, trying to surround yourself with people too. That's just like having someone like doing lights. That's like it's a huge part of the show. You know, like it's like it's as important as everything else. And so like you need to start like next leveling that stuff for sure. And you know, I mean, fucking, we're very far away from like flying Lamborghini at Madison Square Garden break type vibes, floating Kanye stage, but you know,
dude, that was an amazing. Did you see that tour, the Life of Pablo tour, with the floating stage? That is one of my favorite shows I've ever seen.
Yeah,
man, what a show. I guess we'll end it there with Kanye and floating stages. That'll be what you can aspire to. That would be interesting to see you guys all on a floating platform. Yeah, well, you have to play it upside down and float. Where can everyone find you, or whatever outlet of whatever you're doing that you want to plug? Where can everyone find you?
At Wade MacNeil on Instagram, at Wade_MacNeil on Twitter. I think I got Wade MacNeil on Twitter like years ago, and I just like could never figure out the password. So unfortunately, there's the underscore in there. And then yeah, just we got this soundtrack coming out, the vinyl, and it'll be online like on Spotify and all streaming services as of tomorrow for Random Acts of Violence. And then yeah, hopefully the world heals itself and I get to play some more punk bands.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. It was a pleasure, and looking forward to everyone hearing the soundtrack, and I'm looking forward to seeing this movie now that I have an idea of where the score is going to take me.
Cool. Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were going to get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks. But you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. It will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you. Don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.